Ready, Will?
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today is the May 3rd, Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 meeting of the City of Asheville Planning and Zoning Commission. Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public comment on items which are listed on the agenda. If you're here in person to make public comment, you have 3 minutes for each individual and up to 10 minutes for a group of 3 or more. We will begin tonight's meeting with roll call. Mr. Palmquist.
Chair Archibald.
Present.
Vice Chair Levi.
Present.
Commissioner Barton.
Present.
Commissioner Fairclough.
Present.
And Commissioners Oak, Simmons, and Bubenik are not present.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we had a couple of commissioners attending a School of Government seminar today, and I believe Commissioner Bubenik is on her way, but we do have 2 that are unable to make it. That's what matters. We have 2 items that are being continued. Item number 3, request for a level 2 site plan for 68 Carter Street. That has been continued to the will be continued to the June 7th, 2023 meeting, I should say, along with item number 5, which is a request to conditionally rezone property at 99999 Grandview Place, will be continued until June 7th, 2023. Can we just get a vote on that? We don't necessarily have to do a motion full, do we? I'll make the motion to continue those. Can I get a second?
What about number 7?
That is just going to be an informal, but we'll
Okay.
kind of continue that when we do it, so, yeah.
Thanks.
I know you're continuing to those dates certain, it's the June 7th.
Correct. Right now, though, both of those, item number 3 and item number 5, are going to be continued to date certain of June 7th, 2023. So I'll make the motion to do that.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. The next item then we have is the approval of the minutes from the April 5th, 2023 meeting. Any questions or adjustments on those by anybody? Nope.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 5th, 2023 meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The first item then on our agenda is a request for a level 2 site plan review of a new 9-story mixed-use building, located at 72 Broadway Street. Property is identified as PIN 9649-41-2358 in the Buncombe County Tax Record. Excuse me. Property owner is BPR Asheville LLC. Applicant contact is Warren Sugg, and the planner coordinating review is Will Palmquist.
Thank you, Chair. Commission, this is a level 2 site plan ministerial review for a project called Create 72 Broadway, located at 72 Broadway Street. The project is back before you, having been entitled at the July 6, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. At that time, they were proposing 22 hotel guest rooms and 18 residential units. They have since updated their plans for that programming, and therefore is before you this evening for another level 2 review. As you can see here in the map, the project is located in the CBD downtown zoning district. It's in the traditional downtown core, intermediate height zone, and it's in the hotel overlay, allowing for small hotels up to 35 guest rooms. Here you can see the aerial imagery of the site. It's kind of L-shaped. It abuts Rowan Coffee to the south, and then the Masonic Temple to the north on Broadway Street. So the site itself consists of one parcel, approximately 1/4 of an acre. What's being proposed as far as the building goes is the same as the prior review, which is a 9-story tall mixed-use building totaling just under 100,000 square feet. What's being revised in this review is the increase to a total of 32 hotel guest rooms and 23 condominium residential units. with about 2,000 square feet of commercial space proposed, as well as 43 structured parking spaces below ground. Level 2 hotels require public benefits, which will be provided later in the review process, but I know the commission might be interested to hear from the applicant about what those benefits might be. The overall project does satisfy all the requirements in the CBD zoning district. Landscaping is pretty minimal. It includes street trees and tree canopy preservation, which is being met with the payment and fee of lieu. There is a green roof being proposed on the roof of the building, and as required, new 10-foot wide sidewalks are being constructed on Broadway Street. Here are some building elevations. This is the west elevation, the main facade. You can see the main entrance located in that center portion of the building, the access to the parking, subsurface parking access in this garage door here. This is the rear of the building as it would be seen from North Market Street, which is the east elevation. This is the north elevation facing the Masonic Temple property. There are kind of these kind of indentations where suggesting where windows would be, but the building is being built on the property line, and therefore by building code they cannot do windows on those couple stories, but that's kind of the gesture that those objects are proposing. And then the south elevation here, the building jogs back at this point in the building, so this portion of the building is kind of in front of, and then this portion behind. You can see there is a garage door off the private alley at the rear, mostly for service access and things like dumpster garbage collection. And some renderings to give you a better sense of kind of the overall shape and form of the proposed building, as well as the streetscape plan, which includes a new sidewalk and running bond pattern with a brick band along the building's edge and also along the main entrance, and then the street trees noted and tree grates as well. So the project's been reviewed a number of times on a number of occasions informally by the Design Review Committee. It was approved with conditions at the January 10th, 2022 Technical Review Committee, reviewed informally by the Downtown Commission, and ultimately was approved by the Design Review Committee at their June 16th, 2022 meeting, and their prior submission was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission at the July 6th, 2022 meeting. Staff finds that all technical standards have been or are able to be satisfied and recommends approval of this site plan. Glad to answer any questions, and we also have the applicant here with us this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Palmquist. Any questions, comments from commissioners to staff right now?
Did you want to say that I arrived?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, for the record, Commissioner Bubenik did arrive at 5:05. Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt.
So Kim was speeding to get here, huh?
That traffic between your
Right.
I took the back roads.
I do have one question. So on the north elevation, those insets, which are supposed to look like windows, why does that not have to wrap around to east elevation and the other elevation sides? Why is it just on that one in the south elevation? Why is it just on
Yeah,
the
it wouldn't
north?
necessarily, it's not a requirement, I think the south elevation where it abuts the property line there as well. So those elements aren't necessarily required. So I can let, the applicant might be able to speak to the design intent a little bit more. I think the north elevation is more visible today since it abuts the surface parking lot, so that's why they added them to that elevation.
Okay.
I think whereas you can kind of see that the
other
south elevation, yeah, abuts the building, and then the rear elevation is kind of screened from view. So that might have been the
Okay.
design intent regarding
I was
those.
just
Yeah, regarding those objects.
I have a question. I wanted to know, it seems like maybe you had mentioned there was a change in the project scope as far as number of hotel rooms and condominium units.
Correct.
That's correct. So that's reflected in the different documents.
Yeah, that is,
Because I believe the TRC report shows something different.
yeah, the TRC report still references the old
Okay.
land use totals. So since really the kind of technical compliance hasn't changed, that staff report hasn't been updated. Essentially, this is kind of their only kind of step they have to go through to kind of reaffirm that site plan compliance, since they are changing the proposed uses, which still are within the range of allowed uses in the CBD district. Yeah.
And so I'm sure we've all kind of had a moment to take a look at some of the legal information provided today. I wondered if that had any effect on our decision today, or if that's something that needs to be straightened out before they get a permit. Because I know when I was reviewing plans, that was kind of like, it's on hold until we get this cleared up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we're even talking about today?
Sure. So yeah, that issue is the question of the project's access to that private alley at the rear of the property where they're proposing service access to. This came up at the other last July's review of the project as well. And essentially, the city's position on it is that since it is a privately owned and maintained alley, that we don't actually have an interest in it, except that the project is proposing service access via that alley. So we're reviewing the plans with the assumption that they have the ability to do that because they've stated as such. If that changes and the project has to be redesigned for whatever reason, then that might require them to be reviewed, or there might be another that might actually change the operations of the project and might have to go back to technical review and that kind of thing. But at this point, as far as we're concerned, their statement is that they have access via that alley, so that's our, I guess, assumption, for lack of a better word. And
I guess because this is level 2, I just want to make sure if there is a revision, would that have to be a new level 2, or would that be considered an amendment to level 2, since this is kind of really a final decision?
yeah, if their service access change, or they had to redesign that portion significantly, it could come back to technical review committee and go through the steps again. If the building design changed substantially, it would have to go back to the design review committee.
Okay.
So it's really kind of up to the nature of those amendments that would be necessitated if they did in fact find that for whatever reason they did not have access.
So we'll just review what we got right now.
That's essentially,
Yep. Okay.
yep.
But the plan's still clearly listed as public, so do the,
Yeah, okay. We'll let Warren or somebody talk about that,
okay.
I guess.
And we did have a little bit of discussion about that in pre-meeting, and just like the full history. I remember when this project first came through, and I can't remember now, 2018, 2019, it was pre-pandemic, when it was a Broadway all the way to Market Street project, and the alley was the access to the parking deck. So in this case, I feel better that, as far as like if anything did happen with this property owner's access to an alley that abuts their property, it's only affecting, as I read all the documents, trash and service, which could be, I think we all know there's lots of buildings downtown that have service and trash from the street front. So they did address at least that parking part, which I think had to do with a lot of other things, but yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
So.
One other question related to the alley, it's kind of just more of a curiosity. As part of the plan sets, you're required to submit like a construction staging plan. And so in this case, they're showing their tower crane in the alley. I'm just curious if that's ever happened where there's an off-site tower crane, and what kind of agreements need to be in place for the city to approve the use of a tower crane off-site?
No, that's a good question. I think there would have to be some demonstration that either if it's on a separate property that they don't own, that they have an agreement in place, or some documentation, I would think, to be required to show that they in fact have the ability to do what they're proposing if it's off-site. Yeah, that's a good question, Adam.
I had a couple of questions. One, I was trying to determine, because I know it was on the TRC report, planning had brought it up, and I think it had also come up perhaps in a DRC comment, the exact length frontage on Broadway. I could not find any dimensions, like complete dimensions. Obviously it meets the area, the glazed area. I saw that. Plans or the elevations clearly show that. But as far as that 50% of the actual frontage linear-wise, I could not see anything that clearly defined that. And so I wasn't sure if either the applicant was prepared to address that or if it had gotten addressed at TRC yet or through planning. Because like I say, I know that was a question on the planning had in the TRC report, so I just wanted to.
No, it's a good question. I can't recall now exactly. That's something, a comment that needs to be addressed for the final TRC review, so we'll have that in hand at that point for sure. I can't recall now if that got ironed out or not in the meantime, to be absolutely honest.
Yeah, kind of guessing at it, it looks like it does, but it's also just hard to know specifically.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, because that, obviously had to do with all the ground floor activation part as well.
Right.
So,
Yep.
that was where I was headed with that. I
Yep.
certainly don't, again, I'll go back to the original version of this. I don't love the fact that there's a parking deck entrance off of Broadway, but we have them. It's allowed. This is a level 2 review. In that regard too, I had two other questions. One was the public benefits, and certainly ask the applicant when they come up. And then also how much, and this is maybe even getting further into the weeds of TRC, how much thought, and I'll ask it now and also then of the applicant, how much thought has been given to making that a left turn out of that parking garage because of Broad? I know we're dealing with a DOT street, but I know that was a comment in there somewhere is about potential issues with that.
Yeah, only having it goes a right
Or
out.
excuse me, right out only, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I had written down left turn, no, and.
Right.
said-
Left turn might be hard there.
Yeah, and that's, thinking that it was no left turn out, only right
Yep.
turn out of that. Because I
Yep.
could see that being, I could see left turns in off of Broadway being problematic. You can't stop that, that's,
Right, right. I think we've discussed that at some point in the review process.
Okay.
I don't think the determination was made that would be required. I agree it could be problematic though, given that traffic along that street and just kind of the nature of the character and everything else.
Yeah, well, I can ask, I
Yeah.
see Mr. Suggs sitting over there. So
Ah.
And again, I think that's one too, it may be more discussions with DOT and the city through TRC, but like I said, I wasn't sure if that had been, if anything had come of that, so, okay.
Well, I have a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you go into the Aloft, there's a no left turn when you're coming from the south.
Mhm.
So would that be something that we could ask of the applicant, like, to put a no left turn coming from the north side? Or where would that fit in?
As
that's
far
like
as
on the
this
building.
review process goes?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
as far as due process goes.
Yeah, since it's level 2, I don't think you'd be able to condition the approval. You're basically either voting to affirm the compliance of the project with the UDO, or if you felt like it did not meet the requirements in the UDO, then you could vote in the negative, and that's kind of about it, because this is not if this were a conditional zone, that might be something that could be a condition of the approval. It's certainly something that staff can look into further, and I can forward those comments along to transportation staff when they review the projects. And I think that change would be within the bounds of what, could be would be compliant with the UDO, so I don't think it would change the ministerial approval of the project if it received it. Maybe more of a technical consideration that they could take up with transportation and DOT, and if they all felt, everyone was in agreement, then I don't see a reason they couldn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff right now? Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant then.
Sure.
Sure. Good evening, Chair, Committee. My name is Eric Howell. I'm with MHA Works Architecture, one of the directors with Peter Alvarez there. Answer a couple of your questions before you ask.
Sure.
I believe that Broadway is a key pedestrian street. I believe it requires 70% fenestration requirements, and we're at 74% fenestration requirements. I believe that also, just for your benefit, this is an all valet parking deck, even for the private owners, all valet. So I don't see it being a difficult task to see if we can't, work with transportation to figure out the correct path out of there. And was there something else, I believe, that you had?
I think Commissioner Barton and I both had wondered about the public benefits.
Public
If that
benefits.
had been decided or.
Raju Patel is he's our owner representative, he's in the back as well. He informed me that we are going to be, I don't think it's final decision, but the 140 points will probably come from a contribution to one of the major funds, and then either using the green roof as, an access, or one of the other benefits, public art. Originally we did public art, and that didn't go through as planned, so we need to revisit and look at it to figure out, what the best option would be.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I know the previous iterations, I believe, had some public art space on the north side of the building, as I recall.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else for me?
Any other questions for the applicant?
Well, I have questions about the valet. Is that you? Or that's going to be the next presenter?
Sounds like it might be him.
Okay.
Sure.
Can you kind of explain that a little bit more? Where's the valet going to be coming in? And, if you have 10 cars backed up at once, can you kind of walk me through that process?
I don't know that we figured out the entire process yet, but I can tell you that we originally sort of set up the position. Let me flip to a page here. Kind of fuzzy. But there is an area over here, in here. It's a valet sort of area, and we plan on striping off an entrance. It'll be one-way entrance, one-way out. And then valets will be on staff to immediately move the cars.
So that's off of Broadway?
Yes,
Okay.
in that parking, in that drive-in area.
So you may still need no left turn.
Yes, it's quite
Okay.
possible. I don't know why you would want to turn left, to be honest with you.
Because there's a lot of visitors and they don't know how to drive.
Well, these valets
Yeah,
this way
it's valet.
have been trained.
Yeah. And it looks like you probably have two deep car
Right.
storage there.
That's
Is
right.
what you're allowing for off the sidewalk,
That's
which I appreciate.
Will
Thank you.
the retail customers be parking in there as well? Or no? Okay.
My concern is it's only valet. Like if I wanted to come downtown in the middle of the week and use that as parking, I'm gonna have to valet my car.
This is just for private owners and hotel guests.
Yeah, but it's, like Kim says, Commissioner says, it's, there's gonna be retail there. So your retail customer where are they gonna park?
It's not required by this code right now.
Okay.
When that changes, then
Yeah, my guess would be this would be small enough that it won't be that.
I have a follow-up question on the public benefits, but it may be for staff. So this is a hybrid project type hotel and condo. The contributions to the funds that get you points in the public benefits table are per room. That really is just tied to the hotel part, right? The condos are not factored into the contribution to the fund.
That's correct.
So condos are free.
Yeah, building condos have that as well.
Would there be any other energy efficient related design considerations for the building? You mentioned the green roof.
None other than, as many sustainable materials. We're doing brick as well, but nothing that
Certified.
stands out.
Yeah, okay.
So not going,
We'll be conscious, that's what we always do
Yeah.
as designers.
but not going for like the LEED or any of the others that hit that public benefits.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? No. Thank you. We will go ahead and open for public comment at 5:27 PM. If you'd like to come up and make public comment.
And I'll be brief. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Brian Golden. I'm an attorney here in town with the Van Winkle Law Firm. I represent the folks that own the building at 52 Broadway. That's Momentum Gallery and Elevation Loft. We have previously sent and did today or yesterday sent you all additional information about the access. And so I understand the ministerial review process. And I guess I'm not saying this as much to you all as I am to the applicant themselves. And the issue comes in with that alleyway, right? Initially, it was deemed a public alleyway. In discussions with the city and doing some title research, we discovered that it wasn't. Only a few folks along that alleyway have deeded access rights in that alleyway. Of grave concern was the initial indication by the applicant that they were going to clear the alleyway and make it, try to dedicate it to public use so that they could bring in their public, instead of crossing Broadway, the sidewalk, they were going to bring that in there. They've made concessions, and so I'll say that they have changed that around. But we, as the representative of a client on that street, still don't know what the full use of that access is. And one of the big issues is that crane. And I think one of the commissioners identified that if the applicant doesn't have access to and the use of that alley, bringing in that crane is going to infringe on the rights of parties that can have access, deeded access, which would include my client. And the way that we get that before the applicant, other than trying to reach out to them directly, which we did, is to come to these public meetings and express it to you that there is a concern. I understand that if it checks all the boxes on the ministerial review and the applicant says we have access to that alley, you all aren't going to, you're not going to turn it down because I say something different. But what I want everybody to understand is that if there are some changes because of issues that we have discovered with the rights to that access, that it may have to come back in front of this board showing no, and it's really just that access that they have. They say for services, we don't know what those services are. We don't know what it's going to require. We have parking in that alleyway. We have bollards that protect our gas lines. We have overhead power lines that are low. And so I'm just bringing that to this board's attention, and I'm really bringing it to the applicant's attention too. But they're represented, so I can't talk to them directly. So that would be my concerns. We do have some concerns with their ability to access and use it, and the crane is of a tremendous concern to our clients, to my clients, and the others that use that alleyway for parking and access. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we will close for public comment at 5:30. And just real quick, I want to make a quick technical staff. Mr. Tu, you are checking time. Okay. I keep forgetting to ask you at the start of every meeting, and I need to make myself a big note about that. Thank you, Mr. Goulden, for those comments. Yes, that is, and this gets into, and I'm going to try to do it just brief for any members of the public here. Level 2 needs to be, as Mr. Palmquist, I think, pointed out a minute ago, reviewed based on the UDO requirements. As long as an applicant, this project, any other project, can show that they meet those level 2 requirements, we really have to find something wrong with either how they're meeting it or basically with how they're meeting the UDO to essentially deny a project. If they show that they have access and they can do this, then essentially we need to approve it. Now, I will say that they could get construction access off of Broadway. They could use a tower crane which comes up through the middle of the building. Obviously, it would not be great to have construction access off of Broadway. Construction crane going up through the middle of the building is going to present problems. But there are ways around what they have shown if it is determined at some point that they cannot do what they've shown and if it has to come back. Well, it does. This is the 4th time I've seen this, I think. Maybe at least 3rd. I know that. So. Any other questions for staff? Any other comments? Nope. Well, with that, I will make a motion if I can get to it. Excuse me. I move to recommend approval of the Level 2 project located at 72 Broadway Street as presented based on site plans, elevations, and materials submitted and discussed during this discussion heard during this review, subject to addressing any outstanding technical and design review conditions.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We will move on to the next item on our agenda. That is the zoning map amendment. It is a request to conditionally rezone property located at 319 Biltmore Avenue from regional business RB to residential expansion conditional zone, RES EXPCZ. Properties are identified as PIN 9648460425 and 9648461623 in the Buncombe County Tax Record. Property owner is the City of Asheville. Applicant contact is Warren Sugg, and the planner coordinating review is Clay Mitchell. Before you get started, Mr. Mitchell, I meant to make a note of it. In the planning and staff report, it lists it as residential business, so just a typo error on there as it moves forward.
I will fix that. Thank you.
No problem.
Good evening, Chair, Commission. My name is Clay Mitchell. I'm urban planner in the community current planning department, and this is a request for a conditional zoning. This property is located at the intersection of Biltmore Avenue and newly constructed John Walker Avenue. It's split by the road. It's technically 2 parcels with the roadway in between it, 1 project. This property was acquired by the city a few years ago, and, pardon me? 2020. This is Sasha, housing officer who's a part of the project. This land is owned by the city. After several years of work and an RFP project, the current owner or the applicant has secured an opportunity to develop this parcel. In order to do that, it needs to be rezoned or conditionally zoned to residential expansion because of the density requirements. Immediately to the south is the majority of Mission Hospital, and then to the north we get into the South Slope area of downtown. This is an outdated aerial imagery. The roadway has been built. The Heights development on the left of the parcel is constructed and occupied, and Lee Garden Lane is also constructed. I got this shot so that you can see the actual road. This is actually from a couple of months ago. Apparently Google drives through Asheville every 3 months. On the left is the parcel data. The county tax maps don't yet reflect the alignment of the roadway and the parcels, but there is a recorded plat that shows the roadway and the actual dimensions of the parcels themselves. The future land use designation for this property is downtown, which includes infill development, affordable housing, transitional housing. It includes a number of different diverse uses, and given that, no change in the future land use designation is required for this project. Here is an overview of the site plan. The pink line is new retaining walls. This, for those of you that remember, this is the former site of a Ford dealership, I believe. The two buildings, one north, which is noted as Building 1, and then a building on the south, which is Building 2. These are podiums, so there's surface lots underneath each building, and then expanded surface parking to the south of the southern building. On the right side, screen right, is Biltmore Avenue, and you see two areas that are activated at the ground level with Biltmore Avenue. The buildings are pulled back from Biltmore Avenue, anticipating reconfiguration of that. I don't know what stage that is in the DOT planning, if it's in the 10-year plan or something, but there's adequate space to accommodate the widening of Biltmore Avenue for reconfiguration of the intersection, potential additional sidewalks, but that is forthcoming. Also on the property at the right at the intersection on the north side is a transit stop with a shelter. There's stops on the other side of Biltmore, north and south of the site, that are signed stops. This corridor serves two separate uses, inbound and outbound. The site plan show sidewalks being added to the southern side of John Walker Way and along Lee Garden. The rest of the sidewalks are existing and will stay. Some of the technical modifications include a reduction in the width of those sidewalks to match the existing sidewalks that are built on the north side of Lee Garden Way, and also to preserve the existing sidewalks along Biltmore, which will probably be changed and modified when DOT widens the road. Interior sidewalks are less than the 10 feet required, also going to be a technical modification. The affordability of the project is at 30% total, with 20% of the units being at 60% AMI and lower, and 10% at 80% AMI. There will be 102 units in the north building, 119 in the south. The access to the podium parking is imposed entrances at about the midpoint of each building, and there's an additional access point off Lee Garden Way into the surface parking lot. 256 spaces total, and the southern building has actually leasable space. This has changed a couple of times. The applicant will probably, hopefully, update us on the constituency of those spaces. The northern activation, it appears to be exclusively amenities for the residential units, and then the southern portion has a leasable space separate, I believe, and then an additional amenity space probably serving the residents of the southern building. The landscaping plan and tree canopy are unified across the two parcels because this is one project. So it complies, it shows the required open space at 20%. Tree canopy protection is in the southern portion of the lot. I will show you that image next. There are 3 existing street trees that are able to be preserved on Lee Garden, and then the rest are in compliance and actually outside of the right-of-way, so there's no interference with the site triangles accessing from any direction of any access point. The retaining wall along the southern portion of the southern building reaches a maximum height of 25 feet, so there is some additional landscaping treatment at the base that you barely see in that kind of darker green line that provides that requirement, meets that requirement. This is the tree canopy protection in the southern parcel. This is, both of these elevations would occur if you were standing in the middle of John Walker Way. And so at the top, you would be looking north, and at the bottom, you would be looking south, and you can see the slope from Biltmore to Lee Garden, the change in topography. You can see the large rectangles are the entrances to the surface below building parking. There is one area of the northern building that appears to be a courtyard. The building is kind of like a long C shape, so there's a courtyard that's above the ground floor hopefully the applicant will tell us what is going on there. Oops, sorry. These are the endpoints. So this is Biltmore Ave of the north building on the upper left corner. That shows you the activation and the fenestration along Biltmore Ave. This is the southern building with the activation on the right being the amenity space and on the left being the leasable space. The garage entrance, if you recall from the site plan, this building has the north building. Whoa, I overran it. The southern building has two entrances that are in addition to the entrance off John Walker Avenue. So there's an entrance on the west side of the building, and then what I think is a one-way entrance into the east side of the building. So there's going to be some traffic flow underneath that building to deal with all that parking. So some of the conditions and technical modifications that we're looking at, the required sidewalks on Biltmore Ave being maintained to deal with the eventual widening of the road. The building setback from Biltmore Ave is greater to allow for that to happen. The applicant is also seeking a technical modification to reduce the front setback to 0 feet. This allows for greater flexibility in development and gives us that type of development along the front lot line, which we prefer in these downtown areas. Side setbacks are 15 feet and the rear setbacks are reduced to 12. There was some question about how we treat corner lots, and so to cover any questions, we've included a technical modification that the corner setback will be reduced to 7.5 feet. No bike lanes are being shown into the development, and that's something that the council is increasingly focused on, which I hope we can talk about in a minute or two. They've completed their neighborhood meeting. This was approved with conditions by the Technical Review Committee back in April of the 17th. We're here tonight. The council has asked us to schedule this in June, so we're hoping to be on the council for final approval on June 13th. It's very consistent with the plan, the comprehensive plan for the city of Asheville. Encourages responsible growth, increases diversity of housing supply. It promotes the availability and access to affordable and workforce housing, and it's consistent with the downtown designation of the property for all those reasons that I've mentioned. Some discussion points that I thought I would point out for the commission. Some details on the ground floor usage along Biltmore. These are things that the applicant can probably fill us in. Another is some narrative about the way and the intent of the southern parking lot parking area, and whether that will be also for people in the northern building. Pedestrian access point from that southern parking lot to across John Walker Lane to the northern building. The flow between the two buildings. I'll try and see if I can memorize my comments. Two of the items that I put on this for just for open discussion, because the council will ask me about these things, is thanks. What is going on with bike lines into the site? And I can fill you in a little bit. We talked to transportation about this. Both John Walker Ave and Lee Garden Lane are 15-mile-an-hour speed limits, I believe. Is that what it was? And so these are pretty good streets to just consider them as shared facilities, not requiring a distinct bike facility on those roads themselves. And then the council will also likely ask me about sustainable building practices and renewable energy. The last thing I forgot to mention, that the applicant would probably want to update the commission on beyond the minimum required parking for bicycles if there's going to be additional parking in the buildings for residents. With that, we recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the conditional zoning with the project conditions that I've mentioned. Any questions? Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you for that nice presentation. So in building 2, it has like the mailroom and it has like a retail space. In building 1, it just says FFE. Would that be like another retail space? What would that be for?
So I think the applicant has changed these things a couple of times, and so that's why I kind of brought it up. I didn't, going back and changing all my reports all the time. So hopefully the applicant is here to be able to fill us in. It has changed a couple of times over the past couple of weeks.
FFB stands for finished
Ye-
floor elevation.
Okay.
So like,
I didn't know, since there was not like retail in front of it, I didn't know what they planned to use it for.
does this seem clear?
And then, like, if you go to, like, in Google Maps, it already has some, like, condos or apartments or something else, like, it looks, I don't know, I can't tell if it's, like, on that property or if it's across the street. Yeah, what are those buildings? Is that, like, on this property?
Oh, no, that's on the other side of Lee Garden.
Okay,
If you look on the left there, you see those rectangles. That's the approximate location of those buildings.
okay.
That's Maple Crest.
Maple
That's the
Crest, yeah.
Development
Okay.
of
That's
Lee
the
Walker Heights.
redo of
Thank you.
So correct me if I'm misreading it, but on John Walker Avenue going through on the site plan, I do not see any proposed striped crosswalk or speed table or anything between those two buildings.
You're not misreading that.
I know even though it's only 15 miles an hour, that's still, with the hospital being right there and Biltmore being right there, that is gonna be a place where people cut through and want to speed through. So I'm just concerned that I don't see an effort to make, well, I won't say not an effort, but I would like to see that in there to some degree. And I don't know if that's not necessarily the applicant's issue because it's not their road, but. Okay.
Are you asking him to do that?
I think the applicant's.
I think the applicant is, yeah.
I just brought it up, but I.
But it is an issue that I raised during the technical review committee as well.
What are the
With
sidewalk
transportation.
widths on John Walker Avenue?
I believe they're 10 feet.
10 feet, okay. And so Lee Garden Lane, those are reduced as well?
To the north, they're already in place. I believe to the south, they haven't been constructed. And so to keep them consistent, they're going to be six.
I see, okay.
And what about the trash access? Is that gonna be like somehow locked so that, because it's pretty like in a public area? So I'm just wondering, is there gonna be like some sort of gate access code to get into the trash so that like the public can't come and just like dump their trash there?
I would imagine so, but I'm going to defer. I think that the squares on the left of Building 1 on the north building is the trash area. And then I'm not entirely sure which location on the southern building, but they have mentioned that those will be internal to the buildings.
Okay.
Or at least the podium parking.
I've got a question that may actually be for Ms. Vertinsky. Understanding that the South Slope Vision Plan is in draft form, has not been adopted by City Council, was this project reviewed, this is within the South Slope area included in the vision plan, correct? Is there anything in that draft plan that could or should be, used to evaluate the proposed project?
So, in the South, I'm Sasha Vertinsky, Community and Economic Development. In the South Slope Vision Plan, it does have a strategy around using city-owned land for affordable housing. That's really the most direct connection to the plan. So it actually has a kind of a, not this site plan, but it has a site plan for something similar in the plan for that, so.
And what about uses? I remember seeing a sort of transition from, is this site slated for mixed use in the vision plan or a portion? I've got it up, but I don't remember.
I know Maple Crest was outlined as residential. This may be more residential as well. I don't remember, and it may have like a strip of mixed use along Biltmore. I'm not remembering if that's what it has or not. It'd be in the character map near the beginning of the plan.
Gotcha. And I know this is a draft plan, so we're not really.
Well,
it's not-
yeah, and it's a
but
vision, you know, it's goals, it's
Yeah.
not restricting. It's not the same as the comprehensive plan or the future land use map.
Thank you, that's all.
Sure.
Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Because I have a question about the wording of one of the conditions that I should
Go ahead.
have checked. On the affordable housing condition, and I'm sorry, Clay, I didn't catch this, but why does it say target 20% to 60%, target 10%? We usually write it, shall set aside or shall have 10%, and, because that's really the commitment. So was that a choice in words, or is just something that you wrote and I just didn't catch, that it's a little different than
Yes,
the way we normally write
it's 100% your fault. Totally.
it? Okay.
I learned from a previous applicant that those numbers sometimes have the availability to change, but it should be a minimum. And I agree that is the commitment that they made to the municipality. And I think it just carried over from a previous
Okay.
thought pattern.
So we would probably clarify that they will, 20% will be affordable to households at 60% and 10% to 80%. That is the commitment, and it's related to the sale of the property too.
Correct. It's all in.
It's a requirement.
Right.
Well,
Okay, just so you know.
yeah,
I
well,
just want to clarify that. It's not a,
no. Well, actually, the way I was reading that was that the guarantee was the 30%. So in other words, it was the total is 30, and then that target, they're trying to hit 20% at 60 and 10 at 80, and maybe it ends up 18 at 60 and 20, but it
no,
was
they have to
30
do 20,
period.
it's a statutory requirement when we sell property below market value, they have to have 20% at 60%.
At 60,
For
okay.
at least 15 years, they're
Okay.
offering it for 30. So that is
Okay.
meant to be read
Okay, that's, okay,
more
this,
precisely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So those two then need to, unless they're gonna go higher on the 80%.
They can always go higher.
Yeah, so it needs to be,
A minimum of, or
Minimum.
at least.
it needs to be, maybe it should say target 30%, a minimum is 20, 60.
I don't like the word target. We never write target. We
Well, no, I
always
meant
say
with the 20,
will
the
be.
20% at 60 has to be there,
And
period.
the 10% at 80 as well.
Okay, so then they just, okay.
I'm just clarifying.
No,
Target
I'm
is-
just-
That's not a target. And then see it.
Just,
What they're doing.
just to throw this out there for future consideration, I've often felt like when there are other mechanisms in place to ensure the affordability, it doesn't really have a place in the project conditions. I understand it when the conditional zoning is the only mechanism to ensure the affordability from the developer of a, market rate development that's, offering some affordable housing. But I think this is precisely why I have that feeling, is like creates conflict among the documents and among the financial arrangement with the city and the zoning arrangement. And then it's a question of, does zoning enforce that? So I guess this is just for future consideration. We'll obviously do it the way we've been doing it for this one, but, I don't know why we need to have a condition when there is an agreement
Baked into this
based
one.
on the sale of the property.
Because there's not always an agreement, and it is only the conditional zoning, and not all conditional zonings have like a deed of trust with a housing trust fund. So I know you've mentioned it before. I do think by the time all the documents are finished, they are all consistent. And it's two separate zoning enforcement. This is a zoning enforcement. If that wasn't met, there's a zoning violation. If the deed restriction's not met, that's something you take to court to say, this is a deed restriction that runs with the land for the 30 years. So it's a belt and suspenders kind of approach.
Gotcha.
And I don't think it's a bad thing for when people are voting on this and talking about affordable housing, that they get to know this vernacular that you know so well, this AMI and Target and whatever. It might seem like a little, well, I'm going back and forth with Target, but it is important to say, and this will come up when we talk about Section 8s too. Sometimes we'll say, is it you just accept them or set aside? What does that mean? This one doesn't mention Section 8. But so I don't think it's a bad thing for commissions to have to be aware of this and to discuss what does that mean.
But, yeah, understandable. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate, like I said, I had seen that as the total was 30, not, I knew it was city-owned property, but not remembering that if it's city-owned property, it has to be 20 at 60. And so to me, the target was not, but I appreciate that, Ms. Ashley, about that it really can't say target. I have several questions. One, I will start with, so Maple Crest was zoned urban place, correct? That's what it has on the
Yes.
future
Yes.
land use map.
Urban place conditional zone.
Urban place conditional zone. This is being residential expansion conditional zone.
Correct.
Reason for that versus just making it all urban place? If you want, yeah, whoever, because you may be able to answer some of the other questions.
Will could probably answer this too. That's just, we've changed how we're doing things. So that's why. I
Okay.
believe, Janice, I think, we revamped our CZ ordinances several times over the last 5 years. And so we really just kind of crunched it down and said, we are doing residential expansion or commercial expansion, or CBD. Well, I don't even know if we do
I don't
CBD
think we do
expansion
CBD,
anymore,
maybe,
but
yeah.
we do.
Okay.
So we just kind of narrowed down what kind of
Yeah.
conditional zonings we're doing, and that's what that's about. So
Okay.
our zoning map is kind of a mess of
No, that's fine. That was,
previous, yeah.
regarding, so one thing regarding Biltmore Avenue, I hope, obviously I can't force anybody, please don't say widening Biltmore Avenue. So the Biltmore McDowell corridor study, which council approved, I believe, in 22, December of 21, I believe, actually calls for either 2 lanes southbound, 1 lane inbound, or some variation of that, depending upon what happens on McDowell, with bike lanes, not widening the road. So I just want to emphasize that the intent through French Broad MPO and the city and DOT is not, at least what is out there, is not to widen that. And I'm hoping that that stays.
I'm pretty confident any comment I make will have no impact on the DOT.
And that's fine. I'm hoping that it is not a widening. I appreciate that the buildings are pulled back in case it happens. And I guess I should just go ahead and say this now. This just looks so suburban from what I remember seeing 7 years ago get suggested, or 6 years ago, when it was all in the visioning stage and there were gonna be, Ms. Vertinsky may remember, 8-story buildings here and lots more mixed use and suggestions of office. And I realize that is a long time ago and in somebody's dream world, but boy, when I opened this up, I got disappointed. I love housing. I am all for housing, and this just, it just seems like suburban development stuck right on the edge of downtown. Oof. Sharrows, I would still love to see Sharrows on there. I realize it's 15 miles an hour. As I think it was Commissioner Fairclough mentioned, people are still gonna fly down that road because, at least there's parallel parking, but it feels suburban. There's 2 giant parking garage doors on it. I think there definitely needs to be Sharrows. I'm definitely interested to hear what happens on that podium piece that is on the south side of the north building. I'm assuming that's what that stair is that's coming down, which then goes back to the comment about there should be some pedestrian designated crosswalk across there, because if it is to be a shared courtyard for both buildings, and you got a set of stairs coming down, that speaks to very much in a built form that this is a way for people to access that. And if they're going from one side of John Walker to the other and there's not anything, other than the big giant entrance to the parking garage. And then the plantings on that retaining wall, so if I read that correctly, there's the 5-foot planting strip, plus there's going to be on the steeper part on the south side of the south building. That is actually going to be plantings on the wall, attached to the wall. Is that how I'm reading that? Is that correct?
I believe that the code requires either that or a planting strip along the bottom.
Okay, yeah, this is reading the note that I'm seeing, and I just want to, it obviously could potentially change, but it's 5-foot wide strip, and then vines planted 3 feet on center to screen. So I'm assuming that that is vines.
That's what's in the UDO.
Mounted on some structure, and maybe obviously not to the wall, because that destroys the wall itself. So, okay. I think that's all I have for right now. Oh, other than the things you mentioned, like bike parking, trash, etc. Thank you.
I would echo the chair's comment about, you know, it's hard to be excited about this proposal. I know it's been through a lot of iterations, and I have to, you know, disclose, like, as somebody who worked very closely on the Maple Crest development and prepped this site for development, I may have some, you know, embedded feelings as a part of that process, but just looking at the opportunity for this site and the vision that was created through the city's RFP process, I don't feel like this is accomplishing it, and it's largely through the abandonment of a significant amount of commercial space, or, you know, some kind of non-residential use. That said, I mean, yeah, we need housing units. This is satisfying that, so it's going to be hard not to support. But I just wonder if, especially, and you know, when we're talking about the setbacks, I'm all in favor of reduction of setbacks, you know, as long as there's pedestrian-oriented design. And really, the sidewalks are up John Walker will be abutting a parking garage, so it doesn't feel like that is a pedestrian-friendly. You know, but on both sides of the road, not just one. So it's sort of, but you know, if there was some way to bring the commercial a little bit deeper along John Walker, it may help dampen that long expanse where you're just going to be walking alongside a parking garage. And I agree with the comment about the podium. You know, that's feels like a suburban kind of move too. It's a challenge. I understand the challenges of, you know, working with a site with topography, and I know very well the challenges of this site, so I'm not casting aspersions on the development team at all. I feel like this was visioned for something a little bit better than we're seeing.
I was going to make a motion to hear from the applicant there.
Yeah, I was
Before
going
we
to say,
pepper
yeah.
Mr. Clay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant then. Yeah, sorry. I was going through my list and I couldn't stop.
I got your back, Clay.
Evening, Chair, Commission. Sorry. Sean Sains with Civil Design Concepts. Before I jump into the questions and everything, be remiss if I didn't also introduce our developers, our clients. We have Lee Cochran here, Tisha Germany, and Bruce Presley from Laurel Street. And then rounding out our design team is the architect Neighboring Concepts, who is not here this evening. Sorry, speaking loudly is not my forte, so I will try.
You can angle the mic too if you want.
Okay, to start with questions, sorry, can I flip on this?
Yeah, you can do the up and down arrow. Or either one.
I just want to get, just for help to talk about, first of all, the crosswalks. I know we talked about the crosswalks on there, and part of it is, I'm just going to first treat the one at the intersection of Biltmore and John Walker. Our hope is just with the anticipation of whatever the road project for Biltmore Avenue is just like the sidewalk. We want to wait to do that until that's done. We don't want to build something twice. And with our understanding is that would be a left turn lane, and so the intersection would move in more, which would bring that crosswalk closer to alignment with our building, also bring the frontage closer. As far as a mid-block one, right where the kind of parking garage entrances are, we're not, I know Warren and I have talked about it too, and you guys mentioned the road speed, that is a concern, and so the best or most feasible, safe way to do that would actually kind of be to create a hump, like a speed bump, like raising that whole section to cause people to slow down. I know street parking is also theoretically a street calming mechanism, the trees, you know, all those things kind of want people to slow down, but in reality, for another level of safety would be to raise that. That would entail us coordinating with the city of Asheville and Transportation Department, being that this road is newly constructed and us raising it would require regrading and just kind of regrading to meet both ends and what that would kind of ripple. Going to, let's see, trash is the next one that I took notes on. So for the building to the south, the trash is accessed off that, do you see the striped loading zone between the two HC spaces? Will be like a garage door, you pull in, private people pull in, get it, pull out. And then the building to the north, our understanding is that you can kind of see the arrow pointing that it'll be internal and again, a private service coming to pick it up. For street level spaces, so the building one to north, I keep wanting to say south, sorry, is again, that will have, can I guess, switch gears? Is it possible to use this? I don't know, how to- sorry.
I think it automatically cuts.
Let me zoom in on that. Oh, thank you. Oh, where it says zoom. Okay, so this is the building one to the north. The architects have been refining spaces so just what space is allocated to what. So this is one of the latest versions we have that kind of just shows the breaking up of those uses. So we'll have a mail room, you'll have the lobby, fitness, I believe there was, office space and conference rooms. And so there's doors accessing for those. Stairwell will even have its own access. And then the south building number 2 is, yes, the space is divided between mailroom, package area, lobby again, and retail. And the retail will be accessed off that main lobby entrance. I think that speaks to how those spaces and the access points, or hopefully clarifies that. Trying to run through, what else do I have? I think that bike parking was the last one I had, or notes on. We do have, I know 13 spaces are required. We are exceeding that by pretty much double and doing 24 spaces that will be mixed between outdoor spaces and also inside the parking decks, as well as additionally to that, each floor plan of the building has residential floors, has storage rooms. And so it was my understanding that it is possible for those to have bike parking in them, as well as those obviously who want to have it in their unit, that's up to them. But, so yeah, and we will, and again, the building access point, things are being fine-tuned, and so our bike parking locations are in no way finalized in that sense. I would want it to just jive with where those access points are and to be cohesive. The number yes, we will do 24, but the final location, I definitely want to make sure they jive with those points of the building.
I think one of the other questions, I don't know if it was from a commissioner, from planning and zoning staff, was on building 1, in that C shape, what's in the courtyard
Sorry, yes.
area?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, that is on the first habitable floor of the building, which is. Do I need to take that away? Oh.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you can kind of see that. Do you see the dash outline? I don't know if it shows up on. Kind of see this dash outline following here. That's the rough area of the amenity space on the first habitable floor. That will be outdoor space. It is open to the tenants of both buildings, obviously. Our understanding, it's just a great outdoor space. It's capitalizing, it's on the south side of that building. Is there any more than this?
And that's just unprogrammed outside space? I mean, it's more or less Elevated patio, let's call
Yes,
it.
yeah, I mean, I think the programming is coming with iterations of the plans. I don't know if there's specific items that they'll have out there per se, but it is meant to be a benefit to the tenants, and it is the benefit also to be a nicely upscale looking space, and it's not gonna be degraded, it's not gonna be uncared for in that sense.
And then that set of stairs.
Is from the
that's shown is
sidewalk.
from the sidewalk up to, that's the exterior access
Yes,
to that
yes,
space.
yeah.
So in other words, a tenant could actually go up that way if they so chose to take their bike into their apartment and they're on the second floor. They could come from the sidewalk up that set of stairs into the building.
I believe so, that they would have, if they're on the second floor, that they're access into that. Anything else you wanna add?
Okay. Any other questions, comments for the applicant right now?
I'm afraid I have a comment. When I opened this, I was curious about it being 2 parcels. And from the plans, it wasn't entirely clear there was a courtyard. That was kind of new for me today. But also, this is a new site. I almost don't think there should be any conditions other than, the use of the property. I mean, it's brand new. I don't understand why there's any deviation from the requirements. I know that some sidewalks can be continued, and that makes sense. I don't think putting big windows or 2-story glass is really activating the street. It's kind of like the Sweeten Creek one just plopped on Biltmore Avenue. I don't know. At this point, I'm just really disappointed.
On that parking, I wouldn't, and it hasn't been brought up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. And Ms. Vertinsky or Ms. Ashley, you may know, or at least refresh my memory, would this project be going for LIHTC or just, the city's investment is essentially selling the land, correct? Like, that's all the city's doing, then it's with Laurel Street, and is the developer going for LIHTC? Because LIHTC requires X amount of parking per unit, unfortunately. And since this isn't in the CBD, they can't use the city doesn't require any. Yeah, the CBD line is like there. Can we just move it?
Yeah. Why does it have to be?
Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole that I should have kept my mouth shut.
Why does it have
because-
to be on the main street into the development?
Been listening and taking in a couple of pieces, so I'll address that question. So it isn't a LIHTC development, so our desire is to do a truly mixed income here.
Okay.
So it'll have market rate, 80%, 60% AMI, and I think what was not mentioned is some of the units will also have Section 8 vouchers. So we'll
Okay.
be serving folks from literally the lowest incomes all the way up to market rate. So it's truly mixed income, which is difficult, as you know. We do it, that's what we do every day. A couple other notes I'd want to make, though, is we will have a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom units. So that's unusual for most market rate developments to serve families. So theoretically, with an elevator-served building, you're going to be serving singles, families, seniors, basically in mixed income across the board. So for us, 250 parking spaces for us even is a breathe for a minute, make sure we have enough parking. We actually think it's the right amount, but we would be nervous about even going lower. Even with transit, because we'll be serving families, won't just be serving singles. So that's the reason for the kind of the parking ratio. I did want to share, I don't know if it'll help. I don't know if this can work, but we have a rendering that may help with some of the questions that we've had around. But and we can actually just pass them out if that helps. We've got copies of each one, if you want to just pass them out. It's even harder to integrate retail. So we know we've got some retail in there. We're working with Black Wall Street AVL to identify local with them when we're getting closer to completion to identify good local user of that commercial space. And the reason we are putting all of our amenities on that ground floor around that corner is really to activate. We have fitness, we have effectively the folks that are gonna be using the common space will be along Biltmore, and they'll be, you can see it a little better in this picture, that, so as you turn up and walk up John Walker, the parking deck kind of dives into the hill, and so as you walk up there, what you're gonna start seeing is less parking deck, which we know is just one of those things that's tough. But as you dives into the hill, what you're gonna see is that raised amenity space, so that will activate it. That'll be the active use that you'll see along John Walker. So the goal is for John Walker to feel friendly and inviting and pedestrian, so. I mean,
To the zoning, but there may be an agreement with the city that I'm just not aware of.
Is there?
I know we've designated a minimum of 1,200 square feet, that space in the southern building, that would be leased space rather than amenity space.
So
yes.
you've put a minimum of 1,200 in there, but there isn't one? Okay, all right. So my comment about the retail is, I mean, like, I lived in affordable housing in my 20s, and it was nice to have something like directly downstairs. And so if I'm living all the way on the corner of Lee Gardens and John Walker Avenue, and I have to walk all the way over to Biltmore Avenue, I mean, this is honestly like a food desert here because there's nothing else close by. So just my feedback in building this is, you know, to put something there, but also just to put it on that John Walker Avenue, because, you know, coming home late at night, you're gonna want something, and you have to walk all the way to the corner. But I don't know what retail that you would even put there. But even just to have like a 7-Eleven downstairs was nice. You know, or even like the next morning to go downstairs and grab a coffee. So just a little bit of feedback.
Appreciate that, appreciate it.
Yeah, to build on that, you know, 1,200 square feet, I know it's something, but it's less than 0.5% of the total square footage that you all are proposing to build. It's tiny. And for the prominence of this site, the location, the aspiration to, you know, provide a gateway to downtown and a better pedestrian environment, we're not doing ourselves any favor by having just a small token amount of commercial space along such an active corridor as Biltmore Avenue.
While, for building one, well, I would agree that a raised patio pavilion is an amenity for the residents there. I would not argue that it's activating that space since it's off the ground. It's not really like connecting to the street. That's my personal view, but.
May I ask, so what is the change in elevation from along John Walker Avenue? Is that, you know, an issue of, you know, not even be able to fit anything habitable along that frontage?
So we can get you the exact distance from Biltmore all the way up to Lee Garden. I had the pleasure of being a part of the Maple Crest thing too, and you know, when that was the Ford site, I'm going to predict there was around maybe 30 to 35 foot of difference between where it was. John Walker now is that ramp that goes up to it.
So
Get the exact thing, but I'm going to say it's probably 15 to 20 foot of vertical from Biltmore up to.
So even if something were along that street, it would really only make sense to do part of that long facade.
We've looked at this several times with several different groups and many iterations here. To have something going along John and Walker, you're going to have multiple times where it's going to need to step in order to not get into sort of a basement condition. So just to kind of play that out, if you had something that tried to step along that, your second level up now becomes either really, really high, mezzanine type areas, or you start to have to do something weird with it. So it really does play with, I know we don't like to say it, but it plays with the economics, just being honest about it. If you start stepping things along that frontage, and now you have to think about total height, it just really starts to unravel a little bit. And I certainly hear the comments on, just the wishing that there was a lot more other spaces here. It gets a little bit challenging with residential expansion. I know it's CZ, so you can sort of ask for anything, if you will. I think you had even mentioned, like, why is there any conditions? I've been on a lot of CZs. I haven't seen one yet that didn't have some condition, irregardless of brand new or retrofit. So I wish it didn't have conditions either. I don't think we're really asking for anything much really at all. I think what we're asking for is actually trying to predict a little bit for the future and some of the unknowns of what may or may not happen with Biltmore, and trying to mimic some of the sidewalks that are already there. But, if those are major sticking points, we can certainly look at it, but I'm not sure if it's prudent to push the building all the way to Biltmore with the idea that it may be in the way of something that somebody, else outside of here has kind of thought through a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. We've got a commissioner that needs to leave, and we should at least open for public comment, so we'll go ahead and do that. We will open for public comment at 6:23. See no one coming up for public comment. We will close. I'm just going to call it 6:24 so we can have an actual time. I should probably not say anything else because I feel like me saying something opened up the floodgates. But yeah, I'll say right now, I am wrestling with this one as much as I was on the last one. And if I vote against this one, it'll be the second time I voted against affordable housing. But again, going back to, I'm pretty sure the first time I heard this talked about with city-owned property was maybe before I was on P&Z. And the vision of this was so much better and addressed the food desert and addressed a connection from Lee Garden down to, I'm gonna blank on the name of the little road that comes out and ends up down on McDowell. And not butting up against Biltmore Avenue just means that they're gonna widen it. It's not in the urban renewal property. I know it's not. I had asked staff about that. I've looked at the maps. But it's also not doing anything for that. And I don't know if I can be for this. I hate it. But I don't know that I can. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go down in flames for my last 4 months, but I can't get behind this one. I'm sorry. I can't. So will not be making a motion.
Yeah. Grocer, something like that makes sense. They can have 2-story height.
Somebody has to make a motion.
Somebody has to make a motion.
You can make a motion, you don't have to make a motion to, you can make a motion to deny. And you all know that the applicant can know that
Yeah.
if it, whatever happens, it goes
Yeah.
on to council one way or the other.
So we make a motion.
Yeah.
Or they could continue.
Though I will make one, so just so we get it clear for the record. So we do need to make an adjustment to item number 7 of Exhibit E on the project conditions, that it is not a target for either one of those percentages of AMI. So that would be the adjustment that will move forward with this in whatever fashion that is. So yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah, you can just, basically, if you want to do that, you just
Can I
fix
ask
the
one
wording.
procedural thing?
Sure, yes, go ahead.
So I hear you
And
guys.
I know you're targeting the 3rd for council as well, so, or excuse me, the 13th.
Yeah, as soon as we can get heard.
Yeah.
Because there's all
I
kinds of.
think Mr. Mitchell mentioned that.
There's all kinds of fundings and all
Oh, I
kinds of
know.
other stuff that
Yeah.
are way smarter than me to understand all those, but process-wise, so I hear you guys are wrestling with lots of different things, and I recognize tonight is a decision of some sort or a continuance, and then there's city council, which is, sort of the final say, if you will. So what are the options that are on the plate tonight that are possible?
A vote or continuance? I mean, yeah, we can bring up a continuance. It sounds like what I overheard, it may be a motion to deny, which means pause on that. So we can, obviously, a continuance has to be agreed upon by the developer.
Right.
But we can continue it to what would be the June, I can't remember, is that the 5th? 7th. We could continue it to the June 7th meeting.
There's usually specifications of that, what this body would want to see
Well-
changed.
Well, and I was about to say, so the couple of things, and I will be absolutely 100% upfront. I don't know that even all of these would sway me, but I would definitely want to see some kind of pedestrian access going across John Walker in more than one location. And I feel like I think you could certainly do a speed table without having to repave that. I feel like I've seen certainly speed bumps and or speed humps. I realize the table is slightly wider, installed on existing roads. Obviously not the best, you're gonna have issues, but I think it's certainly doable. Those are the two I can definitely think of. Oh, the Sharrows.
So pet access.
Pet access,
And
Sharrows, some kind of, however the pet access is, I guess the pet access and the speed table thing are combined. Sharrows on it, and then whatever other comments there might have been
so let's
here.
take let's take those at
Sure.
one point. So I mean, I need to convey with these folks, but I mean,
And it's-
share
yes.
arrows is paint on the ground as long as.
Paint on the ground, correct.
As long as city transportation says,
That's all you have
okay,
to
I
do.
think we're
Yeah.
all in agreement to paint whatever needs to be painted.
Yeah.
The speed table is an even more of a transportation discussion.
Correct.
And, we want to be,
Again, I would say we'd be very supportive and pay for them if transportation would allow. We think
Yeah.
a speed table is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, and that definitely has to go through transportation. Hang on just a second. We need to note, at 6:29, Commissioner Nebu-Benek had to leave.
does that mess up
Still have a
anything?
quorum.
No, we still have a quorum, I just,
Go grab it real quick.
procedure.
All right. Yes, I mean, as long as a mid-block crossing, which can be negative, can be positive.
Correct.
As long as they're good with that, and a speed table, which is going to basically build up with asphalt or concrete right there.
Correct.
That would be our driveways and would be some sort of, pet access across. I think that makes sense. We're gonna have to deal with some drainage things, because there's a lot of drainage coming down.
Yeah, you're coming down, you're having to do
We're
some
gonna
shifting
block it.
there.
So I think that's fine, and I think right off the bat right now, we're already in agreement there. So what's
Sure.
the next set of things that we need to address either tonight or however?
I mean, I think, there are adjustments that make modest improvements. I think what I was hearing, and as a reflection of where I am, it's truly reconceptualizing the project, and that's not fair to you to continue it if that's sort of what our expectation is, so.
And that's, I just want to understand it, that's on the basis of more square footage that is of different varieties, or you just don't like the podium, or?
True street activation, pedestrian-friendly design, compatibility with the vision that this could become a more vibrant mixed-use corridor.
That being along John Walker.
Both. So one thought I had in my mind is that hotel, which is still not yet built. I think DRC, and that's a hotel, this isn't a hotel, we're not in the CBD, they don't have any jurisdiction. Even P&Z, I think, far more effort went into that hotel about activation along the street than is shown here. And I realize that's gonna sound horrible, but I think I'm already set myself into the fire tonight on this
I
one.
think
Like,
the issue for me is this is basically a place for people to live, come home, park their car,
And
and
drive
live,
downtown.
and then drive somewhere. And it's not a destination, which I think was the visioning of this place. So it's not,
pulling downtown, connecting it with the hospital, all the things that were in the South Slope Vision Plan.
it could be like in Fletcher. It's not,
And I acknowledge it's tough because, we aren't city council, we can't obligate city money, and I know that makes this a complicated exercise because the city is supporting this development through the transaction of the land. I would hope that if there's a vision out there that could be supported with additional city resources, that option should be presented to the city, in my opinion. Not to us, because we're not the ones that can obligate the money, but if this is the vision that aligns with the funding that's been obligated to date, is there a vision out there that would require additional funding, and is city council open to that? I don't know how that dialogue can happen. It's unfortunate that it comes to P&Z and we're, you know.
Like a city market on this, or something,
Yeah, and I guess I'm just trying to think through all the different things here. If we're trying to get up to that, say, 221 or 220 units, and we need to have this breakdown of affordability, and we need to meet 1, 2, and 3 bedroom parking counts, which we're pretty much dead on. I think somebody may have mentioned they were a little worried about the number of parking spaces. I think we're adequate. If we start to activate and take away some spaces that are now parking, we start to have to look at either parking numbers are going down, unit counts are going down, and I think that's maybe counter to where we're trying to get to, so.
Yeah, if I could make a statement, I would say is,
Sure.
I think we are, with discussions of city, are meeting goals around affordability. I think we could do better on pedestrian across. I think that was the intent. It maybe isn't shown, but definitely we could work on pedestrian across. I think we could work on the activation along Biltmore and Lee Walker, but I don't think it will change to becoming what you're describing, because the goals we're trying to meet with the city around mixed income and affordability. So I don't think we'll be able to get there. So I think, but we could work on it to hit some of those other more modest goals to make it more pedestrian friendly, make it more active. I think we could work on that.
Sure.
I don't think we're gonna get to the other vision based on kind of what we're trying to do with the city and around affordability and mixed income.
No, and that's completely understood, and again, I definitely feel like I opened a can of worms when I made that statement. And again, it was definitely a vision, that's what it was all about. It was complete concepts, it was high level, and I will also kind of link it back to what the purview of this board is. I mean, part of our purview, especially when it comes to CZs, is how does development align with the goals of the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan? And I know staff and my fellow commissioners are tired of me hearing saying this. But we've got an outdated UDO. Just because you meet the UDO doesn't mean that we're aligning with where the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan is. And when I look at this, I go, meets the UDO, doesn't do this, and it's a CZ, and aligning with that comp plan is as much part of how I can think about this project and whether or not it is appropriate for this as does it meet the UDO. And this is where I'm having the problem. I'm not having the problem over here. I'm not having a problem that it meets goals for housing, for what the city wants, for what the city's talked about with sale of city land. It's just not doing this. And I feel like if the city is gonna get behind it and we're asking other developers to do better than this, the city's gotta do better. Like, I'm sorry, I can't, yeah.
Can I just say,
can't.
can I just say something?
Sure.
I mean, I understand, and that's fair. I will also say that, I just want to point out that that vision and all that work was done pre-pandemic.
Yep.
And there has been a seismic shift in housing and how you build housing and how can you even afford to build housing. So I think it's a little unfair to try to hold us. The proposals we got back when we were looking through these proposals during the pandemic, before anybody was in a room together, they were not what we hoped for. Or they cost a gazillion, dollars. And so I think it's not that what you're asking for is bad. Obviously, it's, good goals. And we would love to see that too, but it does equate to dollars.
Sure.
Let's just be super clear about that. It's not like the developers being greedy or whatever. There's just math involved, so.
No, and I definitely get that, and I appreciate that, Ms. Bertinsky, and that is where I started out when I first looked at this. I was like, okay, this meets certain things. I understand where the market's gone. But I mean, even as I sit here and I keep looking at this and I go, okay, what if that whole north building, let's just take the north building. What if all that leasing center and the fitness center and everything else went and fronted on Lee Garden Way, and everything on the front of that building is now retail that faces Biltmore Avenue? Boom. To me, and all of that land in the front gets activated somehow, instead of just being tree plantings and grass to allow DOT to take it over, because that's kind of what this building does. That alone transforms this building, right? Because then you've got activation on Lee Garden Way. That way you're bringing people from Maple Crest, like that starts to then say, there's two streets, that pedestrian, like that starts to do something that's, I feel like 100% better than what this is. And I don't feel like it's a huge leap. Yes, it's a leap. There needs to be more retail. You need to work out those numbers. You're cutting out parking. Maybe it's not cutting out parking. Maybe you say, hey, can we do a zero frontage on Lee Garden Lane? You take out 4 parking spaces and add that leasing office item. Again, some of it, I get the economics, and I feel like some of it just boils down to, and I see this every day, let's just go with the norm, because it's the cheap, easy no, instead of trying to think, how can we take what we know are budget constraints and think about something different?
So like on Lee Garden though, if you activated that, you'd be activating that at level 2, 2.5 kind of thing. Just mentioning.
Yeah, no, and what's wrong with that? You know, I mean, even the idea of stepping buildings down, I get it. It's easy to build podium and then go up instead of stepping a building. And yet, if you ask people what places they like, everything is about buildings that are either brand new or recently, but it's all dated on buildings that were built ages ago where it was individual lots and the buildings varied.
How many spaces are surface parking?
You have that exact number? Surface.
Or podium, whatever you
Or
call it.
under the orange versus outside of the orange.
I mean, that could be a building.
152 are under the building, and 105 are in the surface, kind of in that area south of the building.
South of south.
Right. That's
Right
what you
there.
can see from Biltmore. So you would not
Yeah.
see, or from, honestly, Lee Walker. You really
That
only
could
see it once
be,
you
so
turn on
that
Lee
could
Garden.
be building and not.
So, and if I could make it
More podium.
I'm kind of speaking off the cuff to say, because I'm not understanding your process, but it was helpful to hear options.
Yes.
I think it's worth us looking at some options. I can't promise we can do any of them. We may come back and say, we can't actually do anything different than what we're doing. Because I will tell you, while I know from a building standpoint, looking at it, you may say, oh, this is similar to other things. As a mixed income housing developer, people don't do this. We don't have buildings that have market rate with folks at 30% AMI living in that same building without using a tax credit, which is, because a tax credit would mean more parking.
Yes.
As you know. It would look,
and that's why that was where my question was going, yeah.
It would look, from your eyes, it would look worse than it is today.
Yeah.
So this is, from that standpoint, not done. This is innovative. This is something we do and very few others do it. And so I would say we can look at some options, and I appreciate that, kind of some ideas to see if, could we do something different on Biltmore that allows us to pull something into the site that's non-residential. I can't promise we can. We may come back and say, nope, it's very similar to what we showed you last time. It wasn't because we didn't hear you, but it's because we just can't make the economics work. So most of our developments, to be fair, to make a mixed income, have no structured parking. They're all surface. Because as soon as we put a single dollar into a parking deck, the rents go here and there's no way to serve 30, 60 AMI. So this was a little actually out of the box for us to have some parking under a structure, but allowing some of the parking to be surface is how we're gonna serve folks at 30 and 60 and 80% AMI, to be frank. So that's why that surface parking is there.
But to be clear, I mean, you keep mentioning the affordability as a constraint. The land is donated by the city, and that is the mechanism that can be used to get the affordability. It may not reflect, in your mind, the full value of the discounted rents, but there's a very substantial city investment to get that affordable housing. So I take a little bit of an issue with that being used as a constraint of why the project isn't more innovative, because there is subsidy for that from the city.
And typically, we've done other projects with land being the sole subsidy. Typically, that gets you units at 80% AMI. It doesn't get 60, and it definitely doesn't get 30% AMI. So That's really, it's the combined, I'm not discounting the land is a huge subsidy. Without the land, we couldn't do any affordability. That kind of gets you part of the way, and only with how we structure the design and how we structure that can we kind of get to those other kind of deeper levels of affordability, so.
And I just want to be sure you're clear on the process, because you do have a choice here. So we've
Yes.
talked about the possibility of continuing and trying to get it to a place where
Right.
maybe there could be approval. But certainly if there weren't approval here, even with a no vote, this is a recommendation to council,
Sure.
and it goes up to council,
Correct.
whether it's a yes or a no.
Correct.
And the only little compromise, it seemed like there might be something tonight you'd be willing to write in as a condition that was doable about this pedestrian. And we've had conditions before where we're sort of like, we agree to look at this, and if it's feasible, do it. And then that condition gets written in, and if it did then go up to council, at least that condition would be in there. Because as some of the commissioners have said, some of these changes it sounds like that they'd want to see in order for it to be supportive. Might take some time, but then that's your choice. I just want to make sure you're not feeling like, oh, if it got turned down, then it's done.
No, I recognize,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Ashley, because a lot of times I am on this. If we were to continue it, if the applicant agreed to continue it, and we continued it to June 7th, as long as it got properly noticed, it could still stay on the council agenda for the 13th. At least it just gives them, in other words, we would still be voting on it on the 7th. Does that give, I guess, the bigger question then, it's not necessarily about the noticing that it's on the council agenda, does that give staff 3 days to turn it around?
I know we've done that under extraordinary.
I know we did it on the
Circumstances,
one in Shiloh,
Laurelwood too.
Laurel Woods, yeah. That would be my only concern, because then they don't have council doesn't meet again. It's just the 1 July. I keep thinking they have 2, but it's just the.
June later that month, so that.
Oh, that's right. They do have another June one. That's true, on the 27th.
I couldn't say for sure whether the clerk's office would allow for that tight turnaround, but it could
Yeah,
potentially be the
yeah.
second June meeting.
And the
To make this-
changes might matter. If there were changes, I guess,
Well, and I'm just-
I don't know
yeah.
to the level of leasing or retail, it might that way.
Full transparency of process, I guess is what I'm getting at. So, anyway,
We're looking at city council.
Okay.
8-week thing.
Yeah.
Can we have like maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes?
Tell you what, why don't we do a 5-minute break, because I would love one. So, we're going to take a 5-minute break at 6:45. We'll return at 6:50. Is that good? Make it 10, 6:55. Thank you. Sorry, y'all. Down Dante's level of song. I need to unsee, and I know it's vision, but I need to unsee what I saw before. All right.
Well, there's a story too.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah, it's a major.
Yeah, what is, do you think HDMI is doing, they've got to fix this, this is absurd.
I said I'd see an email earlier. It even does it when you're on the overhead projector. Yeah. So it's not really the.
Yeah, it's bizarre, it's
HDMI.
not like consistent, it'll work for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's like,
Right. For the next one, you'll cut.
yeah,
it.
like nobody said anything, it just popped back up.
Yeah. Have its interface, or it's not like it's one screen; it's all the screens.
It
take
just
turns
seems like it's
wrapping
like,
up.
the signal is weak, it's like right on the edge.
Yeah. Right. boards and commissioners aren't like automatically reinstated, but I think they're given like deference to like, I would think they would reach out and ask if you serve a term, that'd be a consideration.
And if they don't want to serve a term, that's fine too, if this is their way of asking. I mean, I saw an email back earlier this year saying, heads up, there's like a list of like resubmission dates, but for some reason I clicked on that June 4th one in my mind, so.
Yeah,
I was just asking,
change some of that
how I
list
actually
too.
listed, or,
I don't know, I will double check.
or
for
either
sure.
person do I ask, or is it someone else I ask?
I'll interface with the clerk's office and see what all that's at for sure. For his term, Brenton's term, if you miss the deadline to apply.
County? Your county. So.
That doesn't sign it.
That just means it's, I don't know what they do, but I mean.
Oh, I still have to go. I didn't just walk in the door.
But your term doesn't end this year, does it? You haven't been on for years.
And then the time frame is.
Pandemic.
Yeah, I know, it's like, he
It
was
was
here
like,
before
I was
COVID.
right at the beginning of COVID, it was like, in the days when it first came on, like, it was in China.
It's 3 years.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah, but based on previous county appointees, you'll be on here for another.
I was just worried I had missed, like, an application deadline.
Remember, how long was Carl? Or was it Jim?
The state of the counties, you can't be because they won't, they haven't appointed anybody.
Because he was retiring.
But he wants to talk about the process, so make sure.
Application, and the clerk should still take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because the city council.
so you're gonna email Sarah.
You get,
Yeah.
you get appointed directly. City council has.
We'll figure it out.
I want to be here. If you don't want me here, it's okay.
No, that's not a big
Just tell
deal.
me. I'm in construction, I hear a lot worse. I hear a lot worse things every day.
County doesn't pay a lot of attention, no, they don't pay a lot of attention. So usually it's our clerks that have to call the county to say, hey, do you have another appointee, or if you find a bill? Yeah, so I think you're fine.
Okay, I was just worried, 'cause I'm usually pretty good about like staying on emails and deadlines. You're good, like literally.
You would have gotten an email,
I
well,
would
from our people, but just, I would note that. I mean, it's always good to have, I have, oh, you've got your file saying how long somebody's.
Yes. On that house. So I'm just gonna sit him out till they'll tell them the job. Pretty much. Until somebody else should do something else. Pretty much.
here again?
My notes say your term started in February of 2021.
What's this year? 2020, 2020.
So it says you ended in 2024, February.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But I'll double check anyway.
All right.
Here, do you want to? That's my glasses case. It's just the stuff peeling off. It just means I've had it for. Do you want to go ahead and hit me now? Later, just thanks.
27th or 8th, yeah. 27th. Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone would prefer that as far as timing. I think that's reasonable. I can't speak to what she's going to say in this room or not, but we can.
Yeah, I mean, even if
We
it's
should
not,
be
you know,
able
I
to.
just have it, is there to say, well,
Okay.
we have time to review.
Okay. That's right, July 25th, the next one.
Talking about the racing of the house for
We won't go past.
Greenfield Alliance.
Yeah.
They're energy savers.
Oh, you were
Yeah, we can prioritize it.
Crawl space.
Okay.
I can't hear.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Good on you.
No, I feel like we can make it work.
Once I get done with this, I may be doing this. Once I have, other volunteer free time.
That's what I'm trying to
This
say.
and MMTC takes it all up right now.
Enjoyed it.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. I want to do it, so I may be doing that.
Your work lets you miss work to do it.
We're working like as a group developer.
Yeah.
It'll help the community for a day.
Mine does, but.
And we still got a couple minutes, I just.
Yeah,
We're gonna do it.
they just want to go into July.
Explain your business.
No, yeah, no. Well, that's right, it expires, but I mean, they can still make that one.
Even if they
You can go up and do things like that.
You know, But there were some things they could change if they can do even with the city for them. And so I think the timing, we'll talk, I'll talk to Maggie about getting it on.
I forgot when I was,
The 27th.
when I was thinking, for some reason, I
So
was
they
thinking
come here
this.
to,
I was thinking this was the June meeting and not realizing,
They-
oh, there's only 3 days for
there's,
some
no,
because
there's
there's no
time.
way.
There's,
I mean, to make the one they were.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what they
All
want to
right.
do.
Okay. We'll return to session at 6:54 PM.
Chair, with your permission, we'd like to ask for a continuance to June 7th, your next meeting. At that time, we'd like to bring back some new ideas. Hopefully, we can meet as many of them as we've talked about tonight. If you guys, along with staff, if you could help us just note all those things that are important to us. We'd like to try to reach as many of those as we can, and then with the idea that we would be able to go to city council on the June 27th city council.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, I think I appreciate your all's willingness to hear what we've said collectively, what we've said, and take that to heart and be willing to take the time to consider as much of those as you can. So I'm happy to go ahead and make a motion to continue the conditional zoning request of 319 Biltmore Avenue to the date certain of June 7th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion to continue carries. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we still have 2 more items on the agenda. I think these are going to be fairly quick because I know we've heard one of them already. That first one is a request to consider a proposed zoning text amendment to Chapter 7 of the Unified Development Ordinance to revise neighborhood meeting requirements for Level 2 projects, major subdivisions, and conditional zonings. Planner coordinating review is Chris Collins. Where did I put those?
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Chris Collins with the City's Development Services Department. And I have a few slides for you that I'm going to breeze through really quickly because you've all seen them already. So we're going to do a quick run through. This is a continuance of our last discussion from March on the zoning text amendment to commit some changes to the pre-development application community meeting requirements for Level 2 major subdivision and Level 3 conditional zoning projects. All right, so real quickly, we said that part. As we said before, we've done some work with neighborhood groups, the DCAG and other stakeholders. We're looking to take the notification radius from 200 to 400 feet outside of the CBD. We're looking to take the duration of notice from 10 days prior to the meeting to 14 days at the prior of the meeting everywhere. We are looking to change some of these current regulations, which I'll breeze through the current and just say that in summary, we're looking to require the registration of the meeting notice with the city. We're looking to require city-provided templates and forms in advertising and reporting meetings that are held to meet these requirements. Looking for a formalized requirement to report a meeting to the city and requirement to follow a best practices guide for both developers and neighbors participating in this process. And email notice to the neighborhood association. All right, we said last time CBD, it's 200 addresses, not property owners. 400 was a very burdensome number at that point. It's already somewhat unattainable sometimes as it's written. This does enable us to get notifications out via the city's Simplicity system, hopefully this summer. What you all asked me to take a deeper look at is what the UDO requires city staff to provide notice of right now to make sure there's no need to gain parity in that 200 versus 400 foot radius. So I'll slow down a little bit as I give you that answer. So I'm going to take these by hearing type on what the UDO requires the city to notify folks of, and the first of those are quasi-judicial hearings. Sometimes this board does quasi-judicial, so y'all are familiar with that, but that is variances and conditional or special use permits. The city right now requires notification of all abutting properties. And the reason the abutting property requirement is there rather than a radius is because you're trying to capture those who may have standing to participate in those quasi-judicial hearings. So casting a wider net might create more of a misunderstanding of who can participate in those hearings. So the intent there, and it was changed somewhat recently to be pared back to just abutting properties. The intent was to simplify those proceedings and get the people who should be involved most likely involved. So not recommending any changes to quasi-judicial hearings and the notification requirements. Post-approval notice is the second type that the UDO requires city staff to send out. And this is just as I've titled it, post-approval after the TRC approves a major subdivision or a level 2 site plan. The city notifies all within 200 feet. I did notice a chance for parity here because this could come into parity with what we just talked about with quasi-judicial, because the reason that we provide that notice is so that if someone had grounds for an appeal, they could do that. And in order to appeal through a quasi-judicial hearing, you must have standing. So for me, I was like, hey, there's a good opportunity. We could take that back to abutting property owners as well. But for that reason, I'm not recommending increasing that radius from 200 feet to 400 because that would be the opposite direction of where it probably needs to go to get parity with that standing notification. The third type is we do a notice of public hearing for legislative hearings. There goes that screen again. Sorry, it's like my squirrel there. Rezonings, conditional zonings, which this group is very familiar with. Right now, the city goes above and beyond the 160D requirements required by the state and notifies everyone within 200 feet of the hearing date. When we're talking about developments, we're already pretty far into the process at this point. We've had a neighborhood meeting notification that's gone out. Simplicity notifications have gone out. Simplicity notifications include a link to the page where all public hearing, all technical review hearings, and other information about the development can be viewed. When we're getting to a planning, zoning, or city council date, that information has been out there since the application came in and has progressed moving forward. And as I said here, cases can be followed in simplicity. My take on this was not to make a change here either, because we are so far down. So many interactions with the community have gone out at this point. There's a couple of reasons. As we move forward with updates to simplicity, I think a better way to do this would be allow what we envisioned from the beginning with that system is kind of a subscribe button there that says, hey, email me when anything changes with this development. And it's my understanding from our IT department, that is something we can do. We just need to commit to it. And also the other thing we consider anytime we kind of cook up whatever notifications are going on is the concept of communication fatigue or over communicating something, right? And which sometimes has the effect, whether you're doing it for a community planning effort or notifying people of a development, of reducing the effectiveness of communication. So for that reason, my professional opinion is not to touch any of these notification requirements, but simply to work with that within the pre-development requirement, pre-development community meeting app notification requirements. And if we go back and kind of take a look at it, this was a UDO amendment that was born of conversations with community members and neighbors who wanted to have a little more notice of what was on the horizon and a chance to interact with those developers. And based on why we started this process, I feel that original amendment does get us there. That said, takeaways as they are as they were, and I'll take any questions you'll have.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Collins. That was a really informative presentation and good, very technical deep dive into the city requirements. Really appreciate that follow-up.
I know I had written down, I pulled back my notes from that last time, and there were a couple things, like way down in the weeds, and I think it was Miss Ashley who had pulled it up, and it looks like all of that got adjusted, like just some text changes, so, yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will open for public comment at 7:04. And I see the huge line coming. Gives me a chance to write. And close for public comment. Again, I'm just gonna call it 7:05. Any other discussion?
I guess I'll just make a general comment that I really appreciate the process improvements that staff has done and has planned for simplicity. It's really made it so much easier for the community to follow developments and for developers to have that conversation. Really appreciate the tools available to track and manage the neighborhood meetings. I think that all that has been very good. That said, I just remain unconvinced that this proposed amendment sort of feels like a very small barrier that's being added into the approvals process, so I can't approve it today.
Can you elaborate that on that a little bit, Commissioner Barton? I'm not sure I quite understand.
I think just, you know, the time that it process. I don't think this is I don't think this is a huge burden. I don't think it's very modest. It's not, you know, and I think that the developments that I work on, we would be happy to follow these new standards, but it seems to be moving in a different direction to some of the other things that have been contemplated in the city where we're trying to.
So I guess would either of you be, I mean, I'm happy to make a motion.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the proposed wording amendments to Chapter 7 of the Asheville Code of Ordinances and find that the proposed amendments are reasonable, are in the public interest, are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meet the development needs of the community, and that the amendment will, 1, help promote equity within the pre-application process of land development, 2, increase opportunities for constructive.
Unlike how it is worded, this is actually going to be the, we'll call it an informal review, basically, although technically we're not allowed to have those. But we know this will be continued. This is kind of a first glance at a request to consider a proposed zoning text amendment to Chapter 7 of the Unified Development Ordinance to revise the allowed uses table. Planner coordinating review is Clay Mitchell.
So I'd like to research that because I think having us bring informational, kind of pre-notice of what we're doing can be helpful. So
absolutely,
I would like to look into that to see if we can do this.
We definitely can. I guess I should say, perhaps I should say this is an informational presentation.
There you go.
Because I don't know that the UDO technically allows informal reviews.
Yes. So let me give you information on a project we're working on that you will eventually see formally at some point in the future. The Unified Development Ordinance is somewhat complicated. And I have spent the last 6 months trying to work with it. And there's, for a while, the city has been talking about a comprehensive amendment. That is $500,000 away, apparently, whatever time frame that happens to be. In the interim, however, there's been a lot of effort amongst DSD staff and staff at our department up in Planning and Urban Development who work together, who are dealing with an ordinance that is unwieldy and complicated. And so Will and I talked about the idea of coming up with kind of layered approaches to making amendments to the UDO. And the first layer are kind of technical amendments that correct formatting errors or confusion that don't involve a substantive change to the text or the impact on people that are covered by the UDO. Our hope is, in our opinion, this is such a change and one that is ripe for review and to try and get these things done while we wait for this comprehensive update. There are 4 separate multi-tab spreadsheets floating around the city of the proposed changes to fix the UDO. And so we decided to tackle one. And that one is the table of uses. And so this, in our opinion, is kind of a maintenance and structural update. There are 4 tables of uses in the UDO. There are 4 more lists of uses that are permitted and expressly prohibited. And the idea here is we can bring these all into one global unified table. Because they've been separated for so long, they've been tweaked and amended to the point where they don't jive at all, and they talk about uses that we don't define anymore. Or they talk about uses like we say retail, and retail includes, and then we list all the things that it includes. Then in the table of use, we break all of those separate uses out unnecessarily. And so just determining whether you can use your property in a particular way for a citizen that is not a planner in this city, it is an imposing task. And so our effort here is to try and bring everything together so you can go to one table and you can tell wherever your property is, what use you can have. And also, the reason why this is informational now, we also have a table of land use impact, which can tell whether you can do something with a non-conforming use. You're allowed to change your non-conforming uses as long as it's not a greater impact. And we define those uses. And so by bringing it all together, we can make it one table. So what did we do? We searched, this one works. We took all of those tables and we took all of those tables and we put them in one giant global draft table. And this was a staff effort. And then we highlighted all the weird, inconsistencies. For instance, one table will say clinic, and another table will say health clinic. And then we go to the definition of use, and there's no definition of clinic. But there is a definition of health clinic. So obviously, we think that clinic should be health clinic. We solicited comments from all of the staff that used the table, and we got about 58 comments, and we were able to build a new draft table that has all of the uses unified. Originally, we were going to make the impact table a separate project because it's a little bit different, but the council asked us to postpone our public hearing, and so we're trying to bring that step into this, and so that's why tonight I'm introducing the project. We don't have the land use impact unification done yet. That's happening next week, and we will have that all together. This is what the table of use looks like today, so that's the main table. Here's the table of uses in the Haywood district. Here's the table of uses in the River Arts district. And then what we did is brought all these things together in a giant, this is a little bit of the insight in our process. So you'll see the colors describe similar uses from multiple tables. And so we went through and we said, well, one use says parking lots, the other use says parking surface lot. And we said, can we merge them? We got solicited comments from all the staff, and we ran across this spreadsheet to see if we could merge these uses. If we couldn't merge a use, we kept it separate. And so there may be new uses in the table of uses, but that's so that we're not changing the substance. It's very important for us to not make this a substantive change because that would require more time and it'll end up being on that spreadsheet and it'll never get done. This is what the draft table of use looks like. It's one table, one place, one reference. I know it's teeny tiny and small, but we'll figure out a way to format it so that people can use it. But now everybody will be able to go to one place if this is adopted and to be able to tell how they can use their property and what uses. So ultimately our goal, one table to rule them all. But we think this is important. The staff down at DSD who field the incoming planner calls, they talk a lot about having to explain to citizens about all the different places that they need to go in the ordinance. And we think that this will increase customer service for people. It'll definitely lower the amount of time and the pain that staff has. And most importantly, it increases the ability of us to make those substantive changes. So at some point in the future, we will change the unified table instead of having to go through and say, did we get the use changed in this table and that table? If we change the definition, are we doing everything right? And so we think that this is a good approach. It's our first kind of, pass at this kind of, modification that doesn't really affect substance. And we realize that we're not going to have a massive public outreach, but we're not changing anything other than format. And we think that this fits the bill for the kind of thing that is a targeted amendment that really results in a lot of benefits. So this will also allow us to put the Cat Cafe into the modification back to AM legal or American legal, so that, you know, it's one global effort for those folks to update our UDO. So that's what we've been working on. And we hope that, you know, maybe every 3 or 4 months, we can come and slowly improve the UDO. This does not mean that we don't need a comprehensive UDO amendment and update at some point in the future, but we can at least, you know, tackle some of these issues that are giving people a headache. So that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. I have a question.
Yep.
So the definitions, I assume, are separate from the table. Are those going to be revised and compiled together, or
Not
are
at,
you going to merge some of that, like health clinic stuff?
but that's kind of a unique example. Like, well, the other one that I kind of blazed by was the parks one. So this is only a short listing. I should have captured all of them. There were about 7 different ways we described parks, but none of them were defined. And so, you know, trying to figure out how to make that all happen, like, see, one's parks, passive, and greenways, parks, passive, and greenway, parks, playground, and greenway. You know, it became so, it didn't make any sense to us, so we're not changing any definitions. We're just trying to see, maybe somebody made a change without realizing that there was no defined term, and we're gonna try and bring those together. So clinic is gonna become health clinic, which is defined.
Okay, but would that be a discrepancy if reading the code, the table doesn't match the definitions for a little bit?
The problems we have today will be there tomorrow,
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah.
Because in our opinion, that would reflect a substantive change.
Right.
And so, like, you know, the next stage would be, hey, let's look at all these uses. Do we have uses that we really don't need to keep separate? And are there uses here that are not defined? Do we need new definitions? Things like that.
Okay.
So it really is kind of a structural change with the idea that that's an important next step.
Okay.
Yeah, because keying off of that, I think where you're going, because when you, and I'm going to use that clinic, health clinic specifically, because, so you're saying basically health clinic is defined, but clinic isn't. And so then my question would be, so is a massage clinic defined under health clinic, or is an acupuncture clinic? I mean, some people would say, yes, that is, and of their own understanding, but does the definition include that? So that's where, like, to me, clinic is, like, health clinic is below clinic. But if clinic isn't the definition,
Well, if it's not defined, you have to look it up in a dictionary.
Yeah, yeah.
And I doubt if a dictionary says acupuncture and massage and things like that.
and that's, yeah, so where do those get into? So, but again, that becomes then the more substantive change. which
Exactly.
I appreciate, and I'm gonna make it super, super clear. This does not mean that we can't have a UDO update. Please, council, find the money now. I'm looking at the screen, find the money. Sorry.
I guess the reason I ask about the definitions, it's so important to talk about those when talking about the zoning ordinance and, you know, building code, but also like for clients, like, can I even do this? What's the definition? They always go to that. And so I appreciate the table being condensed, but I wonder if there'll still be confusion. I know we can't prevent that, but.
There may be, and I think that's why I say every 3 or 4 months. And so when we bring the unified table to you, I can say, these are the things that are not defined, and you know, a suggestion from planning and zoning could be, maybe that would be your next step. We'd love to see something like that. And then
I was about to say, it sounds like, Commissioner Levi, what you're asking for is for the next thing that Mr. Mitchell brings is the definition, because I think those do, right? They're like dovetailed. And not to say that there's not 600 other things we need to change all at the same time, but maybe that in this kind of piecemeal, and I appreciate the fact that staff is at least even trying to do that. Yeah, I agree, that table is kind of wonky, and then maybe the definition, like, if you can't do them both at the same time, get them one right after the other, hopefully that then starts to go, here's the problems, okay, we've made the problems smaller. Next one makes it smaller, and we're slowly making less and less problems?
Yeah, it's better, I think our theory was it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
And your concern is 100, isn't critical. It's trying to address that with 4 separate use tables is mind-bending. And so, dealing with that is going to happen when we have a unified table.
We didn't even have a use table until 2015, I think, when Robin came here. And actually, most cities do have a use table, and that's really the primary thing that I thought most applicants went to, because you look at your use table instead of trying to go through, the definitions are older, and so I would probably be saying to your client, let's look at the use table first. But, and I just wanted to mention, so defining uses in a use table is legally very important. And somebody was saying to me, well, why do we even have to define cat cafe? I'm like, first of all, we just want to say cat cafe in our, but second of all, it's not, what other kind of use, if you're silent about what a use is, then you have to, under the law, say it's the most like this. And if you're wrong, sometimes that's where litigation comes in. So I was like, it's really important to have that cat cafe because it talked about the part that it's it's a shelter, but it's also a cafe. And I don't know if we'd allow shelters in all of the districts, we now allow cat cafes. So it's important.
And I'm also pleased to alert you that we do permit video rental stores in certain zones in Asheville.
I still have my Blockbuster card, and the kids at the grocery store are like,
Taking that use away, right? 'Cause I'm gonna open one of those.
That's Will's favorite use.
That's I'm gonna let it out of the bag. After I get off of here, that's what I'm gonna open, is the video rental store on Merriman, so that's
oh,
all.
I missed, what was it, Rosebud?
So
Jeff,
next
you had a
meeting,
question.
we'll have the formal amendment with all the changes and everything. And I'll highlight the ones that are, not defined.
Okay.
I think that'll be interesting.
Well, kudos to you, Mr. Mitchell, and the staff for putting this together. I think it is an important undertaking. I think one question I have is around why these different use tables exist, because I think the issue is we have the form districts that have separate use tables, and so what you're doing is sort of rolling them into one, which I agree makes a lot of sense. My recollection, I could be totally wrong about this, when the form districts were being developed, it was because of a state statutory requirement that you can't do true form-based zoning in North Carolina. There had to be a use table. Could be wrong about that. And so it was sort of put together as like a simplified use table, and then of course grew as the form districts grew in complexity. So I think it makes, that's all, I wonder what the logic was in keeping them separate. Was it to adopt a discrete form district section of the UDO all at once with its own use table, and now that those districts are in place, we can roll them into one use table, or what I don't know.
I don't remember the statutory requirement. I think it's just that a form district, right, you really do pay attention more to the uses than, because the forms are all laid out for you. And so we had to do whole chapters with all the design and all of that, and it probably made sense at the end to say, here's the use table, whereas everything else, I think the rest of the UDO refers to this other use table. And I've been here, 12 years? I didn't even know there was this third use. I'm like, there's that use table too, whatever that other one you mentioned. I guess that was not the future land use one, but.
The land use impact
Yeah,
table?
that one.
That one is, I think Chris can comment on how much of a problem that is.
Okay.
They threw me a pizza party when I mentioned that we would take that on. It was very, and I will have to give a shout out to Haley Mahoney. Is it Mahoney? She has done an incredible amount of work on this, and it's been really nice to work with the staff between the two departments, but that's helped a lot. She's been amazing.
Throw in one thing for you guys on this. Functionally, everything Clay said is true, but I just want y'all to know, kind of leading into this, functionally, the problem with having these different use tables is they don't have the same uses listed. So if you go to a use in Haywood Road, that's not listed at all in that code, but it is listed in the main land use table, then we have a problem as far as permitting that use, right? We can't say, we can interpret this to be another use in the table because it appears in the other use table. Then we have to say, well, it must not be permitted in the Haywood Road District.
That's interesting, yeah, thanks for that.
And that's happening currently with food trucks in the Haywood Road District, and a few other uses. So I just wanted to point that part out too. It's confusing and hard to use, but it's also not dangerous. We're not falling off a cliff, but it's also a problem from administering the code fairly to people who come to us, so.
Thank you for that, Mr. Collins. So this will be a continuance date certain?
Yes.
Date,
Right?
What we do the formal, it'll be, the next one's formal?
So you're going to continue.
that's what I mean. So yeah,
This,
continuance
June
to June 7th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Any other questions right now? Obviously, we'll get another chance, but anybody? Nope. Okay. I'll make a motion to continue this proposed zoning text amendment to Chapter 7 regarding the use tables to date certain June 7th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Collins. That concludes tonight's meeting. The next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission is June, that was a trick question. June 7th, 2023, in this room at 5 p.m., pre-meeting upstairs, 5th floor conference room at 4:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.